Hey everybody, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be making chicken and apple breakfast sausage. Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to be making chicken and apple sausage, and this sausage can be used as a breakfast sausage. You can even make a hamburger with it if you really wanted to, but you're going to learn of a couple secret tips and tricks through this recipe and techniques that we use as we make sausage commercially. So stay tuned, grab a pen, grab a paper. I've posted the recipe below in two different forms so that you can either make a small batch or you can make a huge batch like we're doing here. One of the ingredients is thigh meat, and so we're actually using boneless, skinless thigh. And at this point I'm just going through the thigh meat, I'm cleaning it up, I'm making sure there's no, sometimes there's little bones and, cartilage and whatnot. And so I'm just going ahead and remove all that, making sure that it's nice and clean. And once I have that processed, I'm going to go ahead and weigh it. If you can't get boneless, skinless thighs, obviously you can go to the store, buy you some thighs on the bone, and just debone them. That always works. Make sure you save the skin, because we're going to use that later. And as you can see right here, I'm going to weigh out my ingredients in grams based off of the recipe that I've provided. And so we're making about 40 pounds, but you can easily scale this recipe down to 1 pound or 100 pounds, depending on what you want. So once I have that all weighed out, I'm just going to put it to the side, put it in the freezer, and allow it to chill while I'm processing my next ingredient. And the next ingredient is chicken breasts. So, sometimes people ask me, why don't we just use all white meat? Well, white meat isn't very juicy. As you know, white meat has a tendency to dry out very, very quickly. And so by using dark meat, especially chicken thighs, you're going to end up with a nice, juicy sausage. And unfortunately, in today's market, too many sausages are dry and crumbly and don't have a very good texture. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to create that perfect sausage. It's got great texture and it's really juicy, very flavorful. And so we're going to use a minimum amount of white meat. Roughly about 20% of our meat is going to be white meat. And all I'm doing is I'm cleaning off any cartilage, making sure there's no bones in it, and I'm slicing it in a way that's suitable for my grinder. Now, we grind our own meat. That way we can control what goes in the sausage. But if you don't have the capability of a grinder, you can obviously buy pre-ground chicken or turkey. Just make sure that the fat content is about 30%. But unfortunately, I think you're going to have to add fat to it because typically ground chicken and ground turkey is pretty lean. Once you're done processing your white meat, you're now going to go ahead and weigh it out. We suggest getting a kitchen scale. If you don't already have one, a kitchen scale is your best friend when it comes to making products, especially if you want to duplicate the results. So we think you're going to love this sausage, and if you want to ensure that you're going to love it the next time you make it, try to get a kitchen scale, weigh everything out. This is the fat that we're going to use for this recipe. It is chicken skin. And so if you can't get your hands on chicken skin, save the skin off of your whole chickens and freeze them. And once you get enough chicken skin, you'll be able to make this recipe. If you obviously don't want to use chicken skin, you can always use pork back fat as the fat for this recipe, and that'll work out just fine. The problem with chicken skin is that if you're not careful, it tends to melt very quickly. It doesn't stay frozen very long. So work quickly, make sure that it's frozen, or at the very least, very, very cold, and mix it all together with your breast meat and your thigh meat. And that's what I'm doing right now. I've got my breast meat, my thigh meat, which has been in the freezer, so it's nice and cold, and now I'm adding my chicken fat to it, and we're about to move on to the next step, which is grinding. Now that you have everything really cold, you're going to grind the breast, thigh meat, and fat together. So you're going to want to work quickly and incorporate all of that. Fat tends to melt very quickly, and so work in small batches if you're using a small grinder. If you're using a large grinder, you shouldn't have a problem. Now that your chicken's all ground up, you want to make sure that that's back in the freezer, and it's time to dice your Granny Smith apples. So you just want to peel your apples, core them, and then make your dices fairly small, so anywhere from a ½ inch or less. cubes. And once you're done, you want to fill your bin up with water, fill your little bowl up with water, so that your apples don't oxidize too quickly. Pop that in the refrigerator, and you're ready for the next step. And the next step is sugar and onions. So mix your brown sugar and your onions together. And like I said, in the recipe below, you're going to find the quantities of each one. Notice how I have two versions of the recipe. One is in percentages, and that's if you want to have the liberty of making, 60 pounds or 30 pounds. And then the other one is a very simple 5-pound recipe. Once your onions and your sugar are mixed together, you're going to put a little bit of oil. You could use butter in a cast iron skillet or just a cooking skillet, and go ahead and turn the heat on medium. Add your onions, add your sugar. And what we're going to do is we're going to very gently, very slowly cook this so that we melt the sugar and we candy the onions. This is going to soften the onions. It's going to give them a nice sweet flavor. And you just want to make sure that you don't burn the sugar. And so by keeping your heat to a medium low, doing it nice and gentle, making sure you stir often, you're going to evaporate a little bit of the water from the onions, and you're going to only cook this until it softens. So you don't want to caramelize it. At this point, if you want, you can add your apples to this. I choose not to. I don't want to have the apples to be too sweet. You can notice how it's getting thicker a little bit. It's very easy to burn the sugar, so make sure that you stir it often and you have your fire on really low. And taste it as you go. Once the onions are soft, you can go ahead and pull it off the fire. Now that your mixture is off the fire, it's time to add our secret ingredient. We're going to add apple juice to this onion sugar mixture. And all we're going to do is add room temperature apple juice to this mixture and mix it up quite well so that we could dissolve any remaining sugar. And what it's going to do, it's going to help bring the temperature down of that mixture. And because we definitely don't want to add it to our sausage meat while it's hot. So we want to mix that up real well. Once it's well incorporated, we can go ahead and start adding our spices. Our first and main spice is going to be salt. Now, salt is critically essential for making sausages because it serves multi-functions. First, it serves for flavor. You're going to get a lot of flavor drawn out of the apples and the onions and the chicken because of the salt, but also it aids in water binding and emulsifying capability. So when you're looking at making sausages, you're going to very quickly realize that without the right amount of salt, your sausage can very easily fall apart because it doesn't have an opportunity to work on a molecular level to bind the meat's protein together, or you're going to find that it's grainy. So salt is incredibly important, along with a combination of fat and protein, to achieve that perfect balance when dealing with making a great sausage. As we move on with some of these other spices, you're going to see we've got clove and nutmeg. There's also some ginger and a little bit of allspice. You can, feel free to adjust the quantities of any of these spices. If you want a spicier sausage, you can add more chili flakes or even a touch of cayenne pepper. Or if you want to remove any of these spices. The only one I wouldn't mess with too much is the sugar and the salt. We here add a little bit of pepper, and right there at the very end we're going to add a little bit of sage, as sage and apple just are beautifully paired together. The combination of chicken makes this a spectacular sausage. So now we want to mix everything together, and as we mix everything together, we're going to go ahead and pop this right back in the freezer. We want to make sure all of our liquid is cold so that when we add it to our sausage meat, we don't raise the temperature of the sausage meat. And so as soon as this is well combined, pop it in the freezer. And you don't want it frozen, but you just want it really, really cold. And so we're going to go ahead and do that as we get ready for our very next step. And we are so close to being done. Thanks for hanging out with me. Our next step is breadcrumbs. And now breadcrumbs serves as a really incredible ingredient in this particular sausage because it holds a couple different functions. Primarily, the reason we're using breadcrumbs is because we want it to act as a binder. But in addition to that, it's also going to retain a lot of that apple juice. And so as we cook the sausage, that apple juice is going to be slowly released through the sausage, and it's going to help keep the sausage nice and moist. You're not using a lot of breadcrumbs. For about every 5 pounds of sausage, you may use a cup, and that's really about all you need. The next ingredient you see me adding is egg whites. Now, you don't need a lot, roughly 1 or 2 eggs for every 5 pounds of sausage, and you're going to make sure you want to separate the white and the yolk. Now, this is going to add a binding property, and it's also going to add some richness to this particular sausage. Now, just whisk it slightly, and remember, we want this cold, so we're going to go ahead and pour the whisked egg whites into our apple juice, spice, sugar, and onion mixture. And we're going to pop that right back in the freezer. And so once you whisk all that, incorporate it real well, you're going to want to make sure you put that right back in the freezer so that everything remains nice and cold. You want everything really, really, really cold. Really, 34 degrees, 35 degrees is ideal. And now it's time to mix. So take your chilled ground meat, add it to your mixer. If you can use a KitchenAid stand mixer if you want. You can use a professional sausage mixer. You can even use your hands. Here we're using a professional sausage mixer, adding apples, breadcrumbs, and then our spices. And we're going to mix this for anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes until I get the desired consistency, and you're going to see here in a minute what that looks like. If you're using a KitchenAid mixer, you're going to mix it on low with the paddle attachment for about 5 minutes, and you're going to see that initially it starts off relatively wet, but as you mix it and the salt has an opportunity to start working, you're going to start to change the molecular structure, and it's going to get very tacky. And as it gets tacky, now you want to make sure it's cold because we don't want to melt the fat, but as it gets tacky, you're going to notice that everything starts to change. See that? It's going to start to look more like a paste now. And at this point, if you were to grab a handful, which is one of the tests to know that it's done, it should stick to your hand. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. If you're mixing it by hand, you're going to want to mix it for roughly 15 minutes, and you're going to want to work quickly. Your end result should still be the same no matter how you mix it. It should be tacky. Notice how I grab a little handful of it. There you go. And when I pop it in my palm, the meat itself is very, very sticky, very tacky. Now at this point, we're ready to take it out of the mixer and patty it up. Now, if you're going to freeze it, this is the great time to do that. You can go ahead and portion it up into 1 pound log, or you can go ahead and pop it in the refrigerator and keep it in the fridge really cold. Put it in the coldest part of your fridge in some saran wrap or in a Ziploc bag, and it'll keep for roughly about a week or so, give or take. Let's go ahead and cook one up, and that way we can see how it cooks, and we can definitely see how it tastes. I want to add just a tiny bit of oil, a splash of oil to a cast iron skillet. And what we're going to do with this particular sausage is we're going to cook it low and slow. The sugar in this sausage will cause caramelization a lot quicker if you cook it at too high of a temperature. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, you're going to want to cook it low and slow, and you're going to want to make sure you flip it often. As you cook this particular sausage, it's going to brown quite nicely. If you make your patties thin, it'll cook a lot faster. And what we're looking for is a 165 degree internal temperature. And so notice I made a log, notice I made a couple patties. You can slice that log up into little sausage bites. You can put those patties on a hamburger. And the whole entire process of cooking this sausage maybe took about 5 minutes. But as you can see right there, we're at 165 and it's ready to serve up. This sausage goes great with some eggs and bacon. Feel free to put a little bit of maple syrup on top, or heck, if you want to get crazy, add some maple syrup to the recipe. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you get a chance to make this sausage. If you do, let me know how it turns out. If you have any questions, by all means, type them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and be sure to click that like button and the notification bell. That way you can get notified of all future videos that we make. See you later!